Alright, the equations you've been working with up to now, the highest degree you had on x was a 1. Do you remember that? Everything you've done right now, you had x terms in it, and you had to get all the numbers on one side, all the x's on the other side, and then divide by that coefficient, so you ended up with 1x. Now we're getting into equations where you have degrees larger than 1. If the highest degree of the variable in any given term is a 2, it's referred to as a quadratic equation. Equations of degree 2 are called quadratic equations. So it looks like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, and a, b, and c in the first part of the definition are called real numbers. And a cannot be 0, because if a is 0, that term's gone, and now you're back down to a linear equation that has a degree of 1. Okay? Now, there's more than one way to start tackling the problem when you have a quadratic equation to solve it. The first technique we're going to use in solving a quadratic equation is making use of something you've just had several worksheets on called factoring. Okay? So, when you have a quadratic equation, technique 1, solve quadratic equations by factoring. That's what we're looking at. Solve quadratic equations by factoring. The first thing you want to make sure of is that all the terms on one side, and you got to set equal to 0. Then the next thing you want to make sure of is that as you look at the exponents of the variable, you start it from the highest to the lowest. Okay? Those two things are crucial in order to solve the equation by the techniques we're going to be talking about. So, this is called the standard form of a quadratic equation, right here. This is the standard form. First technique we're going to talk about is to solve quadratic equations by factoring. Okay, so let's just take an equation and see what happens with it. Let's say you had one that looks like this. Well, I'm going to have to slow down, it looks like. Okay, the quadratic equation is written in that format. Is it set equal to 0? As you read it from left to right, do I start off with the highest degree of the variable and it goes down? Okay. Now, to factor it, start thinking about those steps of factoring. This is what we got to factor. Okay? Step 1, do I have a common factor? No. Step 2, is it 2 terms? No, so it can't look at difference of squares, difference of cubes, or sum of cubes. Step 3, it's 3 terms, and the leading coefficient is a 1. So if that happens, make your 2 parentheses, set it equal to 0. And once you know that leading coefficient is 1, you can go ahead and break down the x squared to x times x. Now how do you finish factoring that? Ask yourself what 2 numbers multiplied are positive 6, but if you add the same 2 numbers, you get what? Positive 5. What 2 numbers were?
Positive 3 and positive 2.
3
and positive 2.
And 2. You agree with that? Because they're both positive. Now, we have a... Let me see if they got it in here repeated for me.
I did this.
See if they don't.
I'm okay with it. I need it.
We have a property. We looked at it way back. we have a property that says if the product of two, it's got 2 in there, if the product of 2 things is equal to 0, that can only happen if either the first one was 0 or the second one was 0. You agree with that? Now, this is called an if and only if statement, so when you see it, you will see either a double arrow in here like this. The mathematical abbreviation for that is if and only if with the 2 F's. Okay? What that means is, if it's written like this is your if part, you can draw this conclusion. But you can also reverse it. If you have this, then you can draw this conclusion. So it goes either way as a true property, okay? Now, if I'm saying I'm multiplying things together and they're equal to 0, that I can break it up like this, that's what's going to allow me to solve for x over here. This is one factor, that's the other one. They're being multiplied and it's equal to 0. So in order for me to solve that, to find out what x's I can put in there to make this 0, what x's I can put in there to make this 0, it allows me to set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. If you had 3 factors, you take each one of the 3 and set equal to 0 and solve for x. Okay? Subtract 3 from both sides here. You're going to have x is equal to -3. Subtract 2 from both sides over here. And you're going to have x is equal to -2. So we have 2 solutions for this equation. -3 and -2. Now, in the case of these that you're solving by factoring like this, don't worry about going back and checking them right now, okay? Some of the other types we get to, it's important that you know when to check them. Any questions about what we do there? Okay, suppose you have one that looks like this. X squared equals x plus 6. What's the first thing you do? Move it over. Got to move everything over. Why? It's got to be set equal to 0 before you factor. So we got to subtract x from both sides. We also got to subtract that 6 from both sides, don't we? That adds up to 0, that adds up to 0, so we got a 0 over here. None of these are like terms, so I have to bring them all down, but I want to make sure I bring them down in order, which means I start with the highest exponent and let's go down. Now factor it, tell me what your 2 factors are. What are you coming up with?
-3 and +2.
Okay, so we got x minus 3 and x plus 2. Because -3 times a +2 gives us -6, but -3 added to the 2 gives us a -1. Now what do you do with these? Is that equal to 0? Here you add 3 to both sides, you get x is 3. Here you subtract 2 from both sides, you get x is equal to -2. So in this case, your solution is 3 and -2. Any questions? Okay, let's look at another one of these before we